What's going on, everyone? Today, we're grafting apples. Let's go. So like I said, today we are grafting apples. And like I said, we're gonna be showing you how to graft apples because a lot of you have wrote in wanting to either save an apple tree that's been growing on your property, or you know of an old one that you'd like to save and grow more of, or maybe you just want to expand your collection and grow many new varieties. Grafting is a great way to do that because it is cost effective, it is fairly simple to do once you know how to do it. And so we're gonna show you all the steps that you need to know how to graft apples. I've got Bill here from Nash Nurseries. He's actually teaching a few of the people from MIgardener how to graft apples. We're putting on a little grafting workshop so we can have quite a few hands grafting our apple trees that we're gonna be putting at the orchard. And so we're gonna be working with Bill from Nash Nurseries. And I wanna first start off by saying thank you. Thank you to Nash Nurseries for sending Bill to do this. Not a sponsored episode by any means, but if you want some amazing apple trees, great nursery stock of all kinds, check out Nash Nurseries. They're in Owasso, Michigan, and they are amazing people. We've worked with them 3 or 4 different times now, and yeah, they're awesome. So let's get started. We're gonna talk about the different types of grafts and how to graft so that you can have the confidence of taking a rootstock and matching it with a Scion. And I think that's also maybe the first thing we're gonna start too, which is what is a rootstock and what is a Scion? So the first thing I wanna talk about is rootstock. What is a rootstock? Well, a rootstock is essentially the bottom half of an apple tree. The rootstock dictates the growth. Now, if you have an apple tree, a standard apple tree can grow 30, 35 feet tall, but depending on the rootstock, you can actually decrease that height and not affect yield, not affect overall longevity, just simply dictates the height of the tree. You can also sometimes get more yield, earlier fruiting, might be more disease resistant. It kind of just gives traits to the tree that you'd like. They're desirable traits. Now, it does not affect the top growth at all other than those traits because the rootstock essentially is like, it's kind of like the stomach of the tree. You know, you are what you eat. And so, you know, what goes in the root system essentially dictates the top. And so for us here, we're grafting 2 different rootstocks. We have one that is called a Geneva 210 rootstock. We have another one called an M111 rootstock. And those are essentially rootstocks that are very predictable. They are semi-dwarf, meaning that they are going to be about 12 to 15 feet tall in height, and they're going to fruit about a year or 2 earlier than a standard rootstock would. A standard rootstock, again, gets 25, 30, even 35 feet tall. The semi-dwarf is about 12 to 15 feet tall, and then you get into a dwarf rootstock, which can shorten the lifespan of the tree slightly, will fruit extra early, about a year earlier than even semi-dwarf will. But the downside, I guess not really downside, is that if you want a really large tree, sometimes it's a good thing. You might only want a small tree. You might be confined in small spaces, and so you might only want a tree that gets 7 to 10 feet tall, and that's for a dwarf rootstock. So do your research, find the ones that you like the best. And then what we have here is a bucket of water. You want to always be, if you're working with your trees, you always want to have your roots wet. If they dry out, your roots are going to die. So we've got here our rootstocks. They're sitting in some water, or they are packed in some damp potting soil. Then we have your Scion. Now your Scion is what you are growing. The Scion is going to be the actual top portion of the tree. So we have here a bundle of fresh growth from the first year growth. It's new growth from the tree, so it's very tender, it has a lot of vigor to it, and this is what we are going to be grafting onto the rootstock. We're essentially fusing the 2 together, using a variety of different grafting methods that Bill and I will show you how to do. So these essentially will be a genetic clone of whatever apple we took them from. And that's the really important thing. A lot of people will say, well, why can't you just start from seed? Well, because if you start from seed, it will be genetically different to any other apple that's ever existed on Earth, believe it or not. It's incredible. That's because apples are open pollinated. They take pollen from crab apples, from other apples, and they can take pollen from 5, 10, 15 different apple trees, giving you essentially a mutt or a crossbreed of many different kinds of apples. And that is why you cannot take a seed. You can take a Granny Smith apple, plant all the seeds you ever wanted in your entire life. You will never get an identical Granny Smith apple from planting the seeds. You might get some similar traits of Granny Smith apple, but you're never getting the exact Granny Smith apple. And so if you want a Granny Smith apple, you have to take a cutting from a known Granny Smith apple tree and continue. So the crazy thing is, despite the fact there's about 9 million Granny Smith apples in the world right now, they all can be originated, traced back to one tree, which is pretty remarkable. So these are genetic clones, which is very important. So first thing we do is always, always, always make your label. Always. When you graft an apple tree and you lose the label, there's absolutely zero way you can tell them apart. They look the same. So what we're doing here is making our labels. We're doing 5 trees per. We're gonna take out our rootstock. We're gonna cut it. We don't need that top. This top here can go. You can actually take those, believe it or not. You can take them and stick them in some rooting hormone and grow your own rootstocks. But for the amount of effort it's required for today, we're not doing that today. We're grabbing our Calhoun cider apple, picking out a nice piece here. And then we're going to match up. It's very important if you're doing the first type of graft, which is the whip and tongue. The whip and tongue, you need the diameter to be almost the same. So we have our rootstock and we have our Scion wood. This is the Calhoun cider. And what you'll notice is that I've selected a part of the rootstock that's going to match the diameter of the Scion. You want it to match for this first graft here. So we're going to trim off just a little bit because that tends to dry out a little bit, that end. You've exposed that nice green flesh there. And now what we're going to do is we can either do a grafting tool like that, or you can take, I've used a box cutter or a grafting blade and make a steep angled cut. There we go. Sometimes it takes a few times. There we go. Just like that. And you want something that's going to essentially match. Pretty close. Now you could just take it. This is another type of graft. If you just took it and fused the two together, that would be just called a whip graft. This is a whip graft. It's very simple to do. The downside is though, as you are tightening it up, these can shift. And you only have a teeny tiny margin for error because you need to match up the cambial layer. And the cambial layer is essentially that little green ring. There's a little green ring that is inside the bark and a little green ring on the inside of the bark there. If they don't line up, it won't take. So what we're gonna do for the whip and tongue is we're gonna come in just above the pith in a rocking motion, cutting a tongue. This is making the whip and tongue. Giving a little rocking motion, just like that. Do the same thing just above the pith. That's that little bullseye spot, just above that. And we're giving a slight rocking motion. We're not putting a lot of pressure. This is where a lot of people cut themselves, is because they're pushing real hard. I'm putting a very light amount of pressure. And I'm just using the blade of the knife to just work underneath to get that. There we go, just like that. And now we're going to take the two and we are going to slip them into each other, just like that. Now you'll notice it matches on this side and not this. So you can see a lot of this exposed side here. It didn't match, but it matched up perfectly on this side. If these were together, just like that, we have cambial contact here, we have cambial contact there, we have cambial contact here, here, and on the other side. This side doesn't matter. We at least have one point that's touching, and that's all that matters. So now that that is like that, we're going to take our grafting tape. There is a few different varieties you can get. This is called buddy tape. So what we're doing here with this buddy tape is we're essentially wrapping this wound so that it is airtight. You do not want any air or water getting in. We're wrapping and twisting and wrapping and twisting. And this stuff just stretches like crazy. It just broke on me there, but There we go. We start it back up again and keep going. The great thing is this will deteriorate and this will just fall off over time. And that is the whip and tongue. Now the final thing is you want only about 2 or 3 buds. I have 1 bud, I have 2 buds, I have 3 buds, I have 4 here. That's more than I actually need. So I'm gonna come in here, clip that off. It will only be able to host, this rootstock here will only be able to hold 2 or 3 buds. Otherwise it will terminate 1 or 2 of them. So this is all you need for the whip and tongue. It's a very, very simple, very strong graft. And now we take it and we label it so we don't forget what it is. So now the question arises, well, what happens if I have Scion that's too thin? Sometimes that's the case when you're dealing with very old trees, sometimes sick trees, sometimes they are just genetically not going to produce a really thick Scion. I have some beautiful Scions in here, but I also have some little tips. Now these little tips have a lot of vigor in them, but they're very, very small, like incredibly small, smaller than a matchstick. And for that case, we're going to do what's called a bark graft. I absolutely love bark grafts. They're very simple to do, they're very fast, and they have an incredible take rate. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our little matchstick, we're gonna take our same rootstock, I'm gonna get a nice thick one because I don't need a thin one. Save those for another variety. Okay, we're gonna take a nice thick rootstock here, chop it off, we're ready to go. Coming in close, and we will do a bark graft. So once you have this wedge here, you got a little cut on the back and a steeper cut on that side. We're gonna simply take it and slip it underneath, or slip it underneath the bark, just like that. And that is a bark graft. It is so unbelievably simple. We're gonna take our buddy tape, we're going to stretch, we're gonna stretch, and we're gonna pull, and we're gonna stretch and pull and stretch and pull. You wanna really make sure to cover up this top, the top here like that. So we're gonna stretch and pull, and you'll notice I'm wrapping up and around to kind of cover that, graft up. We're just wrapping and pulling, and then coming back down to secure that, just like that. And that is a bark graft. Super simple to do. This is gorgeous. This is nice and secure. So we're just gonna get going here, and that way we can get some progress made on our grafts. Now the final thing I was gonna say is that we're keeping our fresh grafts inside, out of sunlight, out of hot temperatures. We're keeping them inside for about 2 weeks for that graft union to heal before moving them outside. You really don't want to, just like you would harden off your seedlings that go out into the garden, you don't want to just throw your grafts right outside into the sun either. So we are going to condition them slowly by putting them inside until it heals, and then we're gonna move them outside and put them into pots. Now you could just put them right out into the garden, you put them right into the ground. However, if it doesn't take, it's just better to plant, in my opinion, better to plant stuff you know is going to take. So that is about it for grafting. There's a lot of other types of grafts. There are cleft grafts, there are, like I said, there's modified grafts, there's saddle grafts, there's so many different types of grafts. The big thing is I prefer to keep things simple. I prefer to stick to 2 or 3. I've never used more than 3 different types of grafts in my experience. My favorite, like I said, is the bark graft. My favorite's the bark, but that's just because it's so simple, so unbelievably simple. It's super safe. It's just awesome. But you just need thin stuff. You need very thin material to work with. Like this little bit here, like I would graft that, believe it or not. This little tip, I would graft that. I would graft that onto the bark, and I'd much prefer it honestly because it's just safer, it's simpler. But the bark graft the whip and tongue, and the whip graft are the three main grafts that I use. So I know that you're probably going to ask about grafting tools. This is a grafting tool I got off Amazon. It is made by Zenport. It's fairly good. I prefer the Scion. If you see that, it's just very expensive. And for what we're doing, we're starting pretty inexpensive. So grafting tools do work. The puzzle piece graft, those ones can work as well. But you know, what I say is there's never any replacement for experience. And getting out a knife, cutting it down, learning how to do it that way, it's great. It's great. So yeah, I mean, with that, you are well on your way to producing free apple trees, or nearly free apple trees. And then once you have that skill, you can replicate as many trees as you want, fill your orchard up, fill your garden up with fruit trees. And yeah, so I want to thank Bill so much for coming out here, teaching our staff how to do this, and for supplying a lot of the practice graft wood and teaching us how to do this. But I wish you all the best of luck. If you did enjoy, make sure to throw the thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe if you have not yet already. And let's hope the wind stops, because it's going to be a long day. All right, we'll see you guys later. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.